Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for this webinar. This is a follow-up webinar from the last one, the Meet the Editors webinar, and we're so glad to have Professor Seun Kolade. Professor Seun Kolade take over.
Right, okay, thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon, everyone. I've been asked by Bridget to talk about generative AI. Generative AI in town, not only among researchers, it has captured public imagination. It's something that as researchers we have to grapple with, whichever side of it you are on, whether you think, oh, it's a researcher's paradise, or whether you think it's a researcher's nightmare. The one thing you cannot do is ignore it, because it's there and it's not going away anytime soon. If I may just ask, what is the most significant use case that you've experienced for generative AI? Brainstorming, course outline, yeah. So that's very interesting. You want to say a bit about, what brainstorming? Did you input something or did you just ask it randomly to give ideas?
For me, generally, sometimes you've been given a new model to teach, and sometimes you're just thinking, where do I start with the model development in terms of what do I use and how do I make the model happen? And so I've learned how to create good AI prompts, and so I would ask ChatGPT to give a very good overview of the model, the year, the context in terms of whether it's UK or US, what the model outcome is. And then what I found is that it's also great for giving activities. So when you have lecture content, to say suggest activities that I can use to encourage participation in my model.
I've used it across different areas, literature review, theoretical concepts, but what comes out does not have a lot of depth to it. So it's really generic. So I have to go back again and start looking for ways to make it rich, give it some depth.
When I was asking her about her use of AI to create, lyrics, she was saying, she had to, refine, use successive prompts because the first output that came from ChatGPT didn't feel authentic. But she used the word that there's a spirit that comes with what you write as a human. There's an embodied spirit. You're writing embodied the spirit, and that spirit sometimes is stripped off. I found it quite peculiar actually for a 10-year-old to express it in that way. There is a soul to human writing that generative AI cannot really capture in its full essence. So there is always that. Lots of editors who don't like AI but ask you to declare it, and then you're feeling, okay, if I declare it, what happens? Is this likely to be rejected? I think that is an important issue. A lot of journals now make the distinction between using generative AI to copy edit as opposed to copywriting. And I'm going to share my screen. So let's ask ChatGPT to generate a 200-word introduction to a section on the theory of planned behavior. Just a very simple example in this case, a simple prompt. And it has highlighted the 3 core determinants. Those of you who are researchers in entrepreneurship will be familiar with this theory. It's widely used in terms of entrepreneurial intention studies and so on, attitude towards behavior, subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control. So imagine if somebody used this and copy and paste it and popped it on a research paper. That is an example of unethical use of generative AI because it circumvents and bypasses the applied intellectual process of engaging with the material. That process, that intellectual process, that is foundational to the whole business of knowledge production. You need to grapple with what others have done, not on the surface, but in depth, to be able to identify viable gaps in knowledge. So this is an example of copyright. This is using ChatGPT to copyright. So I've popped in here the abstract that we wrote, the author's team wrote by herself, but I've now brought it here to ChatGPT and say, can you critique this and give some suggestions on how we can make this better? This is a very good example of the use or ChatGPT to enhance the research process, using it for feedback. Or I might come back again and say, can you refine this for clarity and scholarly urgency to make it clearer, to make it stronger? It has done that. So this for me is an example of copy editing. You have written your original content and you are asking the interface, in this case, to give you feedback, specific feedback on what to do with it, or in this case, to refine the languaging so that it's clearer. But even then, what you have here is then a suggestion, not something you copy and paste. It's a suggestion then to work with and to make even better. So this use case is the one in which editors then say, just declare it. We're happy with that. If you are using it for copy editing, to make your work more readable, to make it clearer, yeah, that is fine. We'll declare it and it won't be an issue. Let me quickly then jump to ROSA. It is the custom GPT I created last year, and ROSA stands for Review for Originality, Significance and Rigor. So this custom GPT has been trained then from the back end as a tool for researchers to evaluate, drafts, working papers, draft of their manuscript that they want to submit for journals. All it does actually is to provide feedback. It doesn't write it for you, but to give specific feedback. And at the end, each paper is then awarded a star, whether it's 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, or 4 star. Something that journals also use. But of course, we know that this is really individual papers. So you could publish a paper in a 3-star journal, but the paper is actually rated 2 star or rated 4 star. ROSA is an example of a custom GPT. We want feedback from colleagues in it. You'll be happy if I can send my paper to Martin and say, can you just give me some feedback on this? I want to submit this to a journal. And Martin, being a generous colleague, will probably give me a feedback. But I don't imagine that Martin will give me the feedback on the same day, right? I think he has 1,001 other things on his plate. I think if he's very generous, he might say, okay, I'll come back to you next week. So the value of a generative AI tool like this is that you can get instant feedback. You don't have to wait until next week. It doesn't preclude seeking feedback from colleagues. Of course, there's always great value in that, but it just gives that extra layer, unique opportunity for instant feedback anytime you want it, however much you want it, on a draft of your manuscript.
Asking because the knowledge base of ChatGPT and what it is feeded overall globally changes. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see even the feedback you get today and then maybe in a year's time, and see whether not just the rating would change, but the
Yeah, I hear you on that and I agree. I think what I would say is that the feedback is likely to get better. I can already see that as somebody who created this tool and knew what it was last year, that it's much better than it was, because more colleagues have used it as well. So in terms of how accurate it is with the star rating, it's much better now. Yeah.
Okay. Super. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Regina. It's good to see you again, by the way.
Good to see you too. Really good to see you too.
Oh, my ROSA replaced peer review. Yeah, I think that's Joanne. Yeah, so I think peer review is going to change in the next 5 years. I think journals are likely to use generative AI for the initial desk review in the future, before they send it out to human reviewers, and maybe generative AI is likely to become the 3rd reviewer in the future.
I did a review for GWO. So I finished doing the review first, and then I put it on AI to see the difference, my own review and what it was going to give me. And truly, it picked out some of the things I didn't pick initially, but it was very superficial. It was picking out things that you wouldn't ordinarily want to talk about in terms of sending it back for review.
Like I have said earlier on, it is also really about how is this trained. I wouldn't use a generic AI tool for that kind of exercise. I will use something like ROSA, something that is trained specifically, maybe for that journal or for that special issue. I think the future of research, as somebody pointed out recently at his big conference actually, will be owned by consortium or consortia of researchers who are pulling large primary data together to do new, brilliant, path-breaking stuff rather than siloed, small. I think primary data is coming back through the back door to the forefront of academic research, because we're going to see more insight coming to life. The kind of work that you are doing with the network, Bridget, expanding this. Imagine we have data from 8-9 countries, and we have thousands of observations, and we're able to get this in a kind of a semi-longitudinal quasi-experiment way that is not just cross-sectional. There'll be more of this attraction for this kind of work.
Thank you so much, Prof. And I am sure we're going to be bringing you back again soon. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone, and see you in the next webinar.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Sean. Nice to see you, Regina.
Thanks, Bridget.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, okay, I'll share the link again. It is publicly available. Yes, Lusa is publicly available. Okay, bye, everyone.